Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo! This week we take on fuel and water early in the morning before leaving Bainbridge, and we continue down the Intracoastal Waterway where we make our way through a series of rivers, sounds, and canals, and we eventually make our way back to Blackbeard's Cove, Marina, and Pub, where we get to hang out with Deb for a few days. I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. The earliest that we ever typically leave an anchorage, or a free dock in this case, is at first light, and that is before sunrise happens, but it's light enough out so that you can see any obstructions that might be in the water. There's a surprising amount of stuff in the water. There are crab pot buoys, there are channel markers, there's other kinds of floats like no-wake floats, there are logs, stumps, debris. There's just a lot of stuff that you can run into, which is why I never travel in the dark. And in this case, it was a very safe trip to go just to the other side of the Bainbridge Bridge to get to Atlantic Yacht Basin to take on water and fuel. And I wanted to do this in the dark because it takes about an hour to take on a full load of fuel and water when just one person is doing it. And I wanted to get going early because we wanted to make it as far as the North River that day so we could anchor and cross Albemarle Sound the following day when it was supposed to be relatively calm. So we wanted to get going early, get our fuel and water, and then head on down the road. And I actually screwed this up. About 2 or 3 miles down the ICW from Bainbridge is the Centerville Turnpike Bridge, and that bridge has to open. It's a swing bridge. And I read the times wrong that bridge operated on. So it was actually closed from 7 to 9. So during heavy traffic periods, a lot of times, both in the morning and then during rush hour in the evening, bridges won't open just because of the amount of car traffic. So you have to wait. So I actually ended up getting to the Centerville Turnpike Bridge at around 8, and I had to wait an hour. So I could have slept an hour later, but it was okay. We got going. We got our fuel and water, and we headed on down the road. In almost all of the video I show, I do speed everything up, or I have it on time-lapse, just because El Jaleo travels so slowly, and that's fine. But I never really sit on shots just because I think they're boring. But I'm going to let this, passing this bascule bridge, just run on normal speed, just because it's beautiful, and just to give you an idea of the speed at which the world passes. After waiting an hour, we finally made it through the Centerville Turnpike Bridge, and then it's about 4.2-ish miles up to the North Landing Bridge, which is also a bridge that has to be opened. And it opens on the half hour and the hour, so we dropped the hammer to try and get there in an hour, so we wouldn't lose another half an hour of time. After clearing the North Landing Bridge, we continued down the North Landing River until we got to Currituck Sound, which I'm just finding out is its name. I always thought it was Coinjock Bay, that entire area, but it's Currituck Sound. And it's not one of my favorite places on Earth. It's very long and shallow, and it's just 2 really long straight stretches that you go on. It's just very boring. There's nothing really to look at. It's, it's one of the 2 places I don't really care for, the other being Cape Fear River. Everywhere else is fine. I don't know what I don't like about this place. It just, I don't know. It's just kind of meh. But anyway, so we continued down Currituck Sound. We went through Coinjock, and that got us into the North River. And we made it quite a ways down the North River. We anchored just about halfway down the North River. So in the morning, we would only have to go about 5 more miles down the North River until we got into Albemarle Sound. After a peaceful night at anchor in the North River, we got up early the next morning so we could make it down the rest of the North River, across Albemarle Sound, and down the Alligator River before we anchored for the evening in Wynn Bay. And Wynn Bay is right at the mouth of the Alligator River-Pungo River Canal. Now you will notice when we anchor, sometimes there's a little yellow ball that's in the water on a rope, and that is actually attached to the anchor itself. And it's called an anchor float. Mine's a lot bigger than what most people use, but I use it in certain circumstances, but not all the time for certain. Most of the time I actually don't even use it. But there are instances where I do. Now, you'll notice when we started the trip, when we left Delaware City, I used it for the first couple of nights, and that's because I got a new chain. And I wasn't sure, if the chain was going to break. You never know if there's a weak link or something. And the anchor itself cost around $1,500. So if push comes to shove, I did not want to lose my anchor. So if the chain broke or something happened, a shackle came undone or something, maybe I didn't do it correctly. So for the first couple of nights, just to make sure the new rode, the new ground tackle is what it's called, was working properly, I did attach a line to the anchor so I could retrieve it just in case something went wrong with the setup. So after the first couple of nights, I stopped using it, and there are certain instances where I will use it again, like here in the North River and again in Alligator River. Those are areas where there's known to be a lot of snags in the water. There's a lot of debris on the bottom, logs and that kind of stuff. And when you're setting your anchor, if you power set it and it happens to be underneath a log or a rock or something like that, it can be really hard or impossible to get out the next morning. It can become stuck. So if you have a line attached to your anchor, you can go out with the dinghy or whatever, and you can actually pull your anchor backwards to get it out from underneath whatever it's stuck on. So I do use the anchor line, in instances where they're in areas that are well known to have a lot of snags. So on the entire Intracoastal Waterway, the only place I do use it is the North River and Alligator River. After that, I stow it away and don't use it. And I've never had to use it. I've never ever got my anchor stuck on anything or caught. But it's better to be safe than sorry. This is pretty interesting. We're just leaving the North River. There's Albemarle Sound. And there's this section here. You can see there's a shoal right over there, that line where the wake is coming from. And then there's one over here. You can see the line there too. And when boats come through, sorry, I've got to correct here. Getting out of the channel. When the waves come through, they just bounce back and forth between the two shoals. And so this must be wake from the boat that came through a few minutes ago, which is really interesting that it just kind of bounces back and forth between the shoals. I ain't seen that before. Kind of interesting. Albemarle Sound is only 10 or 12 miles wide, and it only takes about 3 hours to cross, and it was a very peaceful journey. There wasn't much wind, very low wake. It was a very nice, pleasant morning. Once we made it across Albemarle Sound, we headed through the Alligator River Swing Bridge, which was the last bridge we were going to have to navigate for quite a little bit. Heading down the Alligator River can get a little sporty at times if the wind kicks up, but today was absolutely beautiful. The water was glass and it was smooth sailing all the way down to Wynn Bay. After spending a wonderful evening in Wynn Bay, we got up early the next morning to make the final push down to Pungo Creek where we could reunite with Deb and stop at Blackbeard's Cove Marina and Pub. While leaving Wynn Bay, we actually had our second round of engine difficulties, and it was just like back in Mill Creek. The engine struggled to start. It took about 10 seconds of turning it over, and it definitely sounded like a voltage issue again. And one thing that I forgot to do, as soon as I got to Wynn Bay, after I dropped and set the anchor, I turned off the engine, and I forgot to turn off the DC to DC converters for about an hour. So this was good. It at least verified what I suspected was going on, is that when the alternator is running and the DC to DC converters are running, most of that voltage is actually going to the DC to DC converters and it's not recharging the battery. And I think the reason why I didn't see an effect until Mill Creek was because that lead acid battery was brand new, so it was being used to start the engine all those times until we got down to Mill Creek, and by that time it had run down enough in voltage that it struggled to start it. So what I had been doing in between Mill Creek and then Wynn Bay was, once I would drop the anchor, I would go down below and shut off the DC to DC converters. And while I was setting the anchor and doing, it takes about 20 minutes of monkeying around to get all the chain paid out, put your snubber line on and then set the anchor. And during that time, it was enough time for the alternator to recharge that lead acid battery so it could start the engine. So when I forgot to turn those off, and then the next morning we had the engine problem, that confirmed that that's what was going on. So that was a huge relief. Even though I had problems starting the engine, it was simultaneously a big relief because I knew what it was. And since then, I've actually gone through and changed the settings in the DC to DC converters. There's an engine shutoff detection mode, and I just raised all of those voltages. So it won't actually kick on until the voltage output from the alternator is around 14.4 volts. And that doesn't happen even when you're idling. It doesn't put out that much voltage, so they won't actually kick on until we're actually motoring, which is a good thing. And then it'll shut off once it gets back down to 14 volts. So as soon as I throttle down and I'm going to set the anchor, those DC to DC converters automatically kick off. So I haven't had any issues since, so that seems to be that problem solved, which is a massive relief. When that happened in Mill Creek, I was very worried that I had done something to the engine, but thankfully everything seems good. So we left Wynn Bay, we went through the Alligator River-Pungo River Canal, which I imagine right now you're seeing us going through it. It's a very straight canal, lots of snags on the sides. You just stick to the center and everything's fine. We did make it back to Pungo Creek, so once you exit the Alligator River-Pungo River Canal, you go down Pungo River, and right at the bend of Pungo River is where Belhaven is. And if you go up Pungo Creek, that's where Blackbeard's Cove Marina and Pub is. So it was kind of a bittersweet reunion this time. I love seeing Deb. I love Deb, as you've seen in the other videos. She's a fantastic person. I love what she's done with the marina. But at this point in her life, it was time for her to move on and do some different things. So when I was getting there, she actually was just closing, I don't know if that's the right word, on selling the marina. So she has since sold Blackbeard's Cove Marina and Pub. I don't know if the new owners are going to retain the name or not. I don't know anything about them. I didn't meet them. We stayed at the marina for about, I think 3 days. And those were like 3 of the last 5 days that she was going to be owning it. So I'm glad we got down there. We could meet with Deb, we could visit, and hang out at the marina one last time. It's always been our home away from home, and it's going to, I'm going to miss it. It's a beautiful place, perfect location for us and the pups, but at the same time, I'm really happy for Deb. I know she wanted to do some other things and had some other opportunities that she wanted to explore, so I couldn't be more happy for her. Now, if you do go through the area and you do stay at whatever the marina in Pungo Creek ends up being called, if it's still Blackbeard's Cove, I'd love to know anyone that stays there. leave a comment down below and let me know how the new owners are. I'm sure they'll be perfectly fine. Don't know anything about them, never met them, you know. So it'd be interesting to see. And you know, to be brutally honest with you, if Deb didn't own the place, I wouldn't stop. Not because there's anything wrong with the marina. We're just not marina people. We are anchor people. And that's what we're built and designed to do. And that's where we're most comfortable. I don't like being at marinas. In marinas, to me, I equate a marina with danger. You can run into pilings, you know, if a line snaps, you can get thrown into... It's not water that makes you sink, it's land. And when you're in a marina, there's a lot of land around for you to run into and sink. So I much prefer being at anchor. It's a lot less stressful for us, for me, and that's where that's our sweet spot. So we probably won't stop there anymore, which is fine. It's the end of an era. I will definitely stop. There's a place in Belhaven where you can anchor right close to the town, and then we'll dinghy in and we can still visit Deb and stuff, so that'll be great. I'm just so happy for her that she's able to explore other opportunities and move on. Yeah, and if anyone stops there, let me know how the new owners are. And that's all we have time for this week. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a bunch. I would love to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I definitely wouldn't bother making these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotten. Thank you guys so very much. Your support means the world to me. And I do have one legacy patron member. Her name is Joan Lindbow. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she will live on in our hearts forever. We miss you, Joan. If you are interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to our Patreon page where there's hundreds of extra videos and photos, bonus content, and you would help support the channel, which would be amazing. Alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.